The story of Ascension is sort of an odd tale. And it's one that I look at, I don't know if you do or not, and say, and what's the point? What difference does it make in our lives of faith that Jesus was ascended, seemingly levitates from the earth? Let's look at the story again. The disciples had lost Jesus once. He had remade their lives. He had reshaped their purpose. He had helped them, I imagine, reimagine God. So when he was crucified, when he died, they had to be devastated. But they hadn't even begun to grieve when he came back to them. He was with them from time to time in really profound ways during these 40 days since that first Easter morn. He taught them about the realm of God, how they could find it, and how they could live the sort of life that Jesus lived. Because of all that had happened, I suspect that they hung on every word. But on this Ascension Day, he leaves again. Oh, it was different this time. No suffering, no death, but a will, a design somehow to leave. That he wasn't intended to be with them in a continuing way and live for a really long time and then die again. After pronouncing a blessing on them and commissioning them to continue the work that he had done, he left. He was lifted up, the scripture says, and a cloud took him out of their sight. Jesus changed. He changed when he was resurrected, and now he's changing again, this time physically removed from them. And because of that, it seems, unleashed into the world. Spiritually present he was to be in both realms, both present with God, ascended, and present with them in a continuing way. They would no longer see him in physical form. So their conversations had to be something other than face-to-face. They would need to find other ways of seeing, communicating, because Jesus had changed. And they would be changed because of this, beyond their wildest imaginings. Some of you know that I recently went back to Tennessee for my mother's funeral. When I was there, I saw people that I had known since probably before I could remember. They were ones who had nurtured me alongside my mom and dad. Sunday school teachers. My Sunday school teacher from when I was 8 years old was there. Scout leaders, neighbors. They took care of me when I was a child. They taught me and loved me. And it's so funny because even though they looked older, it seemed like they hadn't changed in these last 50 years. And I imagined what it would be like to have friendships with these who had meant so much in that long ago time and place. But then I realized how much I've changed, how much I've grown. Would they understand me now? Things are different. I'm different. I suspect they are too, but I don't know those changes. I've grown up. In fact, my children are adults as well. I'm a minister. I'm more capable of and insistent on authentic relationships because I know myself better. I've experienced life's deep disappointments and fulfillments as well. So, if relationship was to take place with those from my childhood, we would connect in very different ways because of the person I had become, even if they hadn't changed at all, which I'm sure they have. I would like to propose to us today that it's the same with Jesus. The disciples had grown accustomed to Jesus' physical presence with them. They relied on it. But now, that would need to change. They would need to be changed in order to be in this new, powerful, different sort of relationship with Jesus. As Jesus leaves, he gives them the promise of ascension. That is, that they would receive the power of the Spirit. that is available somehow with this change that Ascension brings. Through Jesus' change, those who remain in communion with him must also be changed. They must be clothed with power, filled with the Spirit of Christ that will rest on them. You see, they will be the ones now to offer God's ways to the world. The challenge for the disciples was to let go. To let go with tender, powerful memories of the ways that Jesus had been known to them in the past. And to step into this new relationship, this new way of knowing. And to let themselves be changed as well. Are we willing to know Jesus in different ways? In ways appropriate to our adulthood, to our age, and to our developed faith? Are we willing to grow and change, to allow the Spirit of Christ to change us, and perhaps to change the nature of our faith as well? Is your relationship with Jesus different than when you were 12 or 20 or even 30? Or do you settle somehow for the concrete faith of your childhood and the Jesus who sparked that faith in you? Or has Jesus changed for you? This can be a frightening process, but I believe it's more frightening if it doesn't happen. If we don't allow Jesus to change and to change us. And so I ask us this morning, this Ascension Day, to let the Jesus who gave himself to God's changes in him to change you as we grow in spirit. With that resolve, we sing together. Left them, he said, "You will receive power." In promising the Spirit, you see, Jesus suggests that they will continue, not do something different, but that they will continue what he had begun. That they would be the ones to offer the touch and presence of God as he had done. This bears a striking resemblance to the story of those prophets with the sound-alike names, Elijah and Elisha, that we heard about this morning. These two men of God had crossed the river, the scripture tells us. Now, crossing the river says that something is changing. Something is going to be different with this crossing. Indeed, it was. Elijah, like Jesus, was just about to ascend. And so he offered his last gifts to Elisha, the younger prophet, who asked for a double share of the prophet's spirit. After Elijah's dramatic ascension, his actually was more dramatic than Jesus's, with chariots of fire and horses. After his dramatic ascension, Elisha, the younger one, picked up Elijah's mantle. That is his cloak, perhaps a symbol of his authority, his power. Elisha picks it up. He rolls it up and strikes the water with it and called out to the God that Elijah spoke so powerfully of. And the waters parted. Clearly, the spirit and power of Elijah the prophet had been passed to him. Like Elisha, Jesus had given gifts to those who followed him, so that, like Elisha, they could be the power and embodiment of God on earth. Jesus gives us, if you will, a spiritual mantle, an infusion of the presence and Spirit of Christ. I'm passing my mantle, my symbol of authority and power on to you, Jesus says. My power, therefore, is yours. Power to what? Power to heal, to bless, to liberate, to love as Jesus loved. You are my witnesses, he says, teaching and living the realm of God with your very lives. It is yours. The power and the challenge is yours to call others to love God and neighbor. You are now the ones with the authority on your shoulders to bear God's wisdom and compassion, God's joy and justice. And so I ask us today, do we know that power in our lives? That authority? Do we live as those who know we have the authority to live this Jesus life? To do power-filled acts of love and justice? We now have those gifts. The power to offer forgiveness, to show that amazing transforming love, to give grace at every turn. Do you want to live like this? With love and grace and power and kindness like Jesus had? May we this morning, like Elisha, reach out and take hold of that mantle that Jesus is placing on our shoulders. Take that spiritual power that the prophets and Jesus give to us. I believe that we're being given the mantle of our present prophets, our modern day prophets as well. Several weeks ago, we hosted a current prophet in our world, Congressman John Lewis. In this concrete example, let's ask ourselves, what would it mean for us to receive the mantle of political and social responsibility from him? Or from those prophets of grace and kindness that fill all our lives? With resolve, with openness, let's sing together. He says to them, you will be my witnesses. With this power, with this legacy you receive, I commission you now. Jesus had a depth of love for God that gave him a passion for people. His love for God sustained him in his mission, even in the face of death. Jesus drew people to him. I've often imagined Jesus as so fully alive that he radiated joy, a joy for life and living, a zest for life, a love for relating to other people and connecting with all classes and genders and nationalities. We have those wonderful stories that tell us about him in that way. Nurtured by his connection with God and fully alive, Jesus went through life with passion, with life and energy and power to do and to become. As Jesus leaves, he passes on his passion. He makes us witnesses of that relationship with God, that life-giving connection that gives us that passion for life, equipping all of us who follow Jesus to exhibit the love and life of God just in our very living, empowering his disciples, that includes us, to live authentically and powerfully, rooted in our relationship with the one who passes that passion along to us. And so I ask us today, how is our passion for living? Do we drudge through life, dreading to see certain people, wondering what we can do and say? Would our families and co-workers and those we barely know say that from us exudes grace and hope? Let me translate a little bit. Does the love and grace of Christ flow through you in your everyday life? If you don't know, the answer is probably, who knows. Do we look for opportunities to offer kindness, even to people we don't like? Or do we somehow forget the inheritance that we've received, the responsibility, the authority, the power, the passion that we've received, and slip into self-pity or into treating others with less than kindness? This life is ours to give away. It's ours to spur on in other people. What will those who struggle with life think about us and about Christ as seen in us? Are we witnesses to God's love and goodness simply because we wake up with it overflowing from our being? Have you reached out and taken into yourselves this gift, this passion of Christ? I ask us, challenge us, invite us today to receive it like a blessing, a gift from God. It'll look different in each of us. It'll be our gift from the time we receive it. Nurture your life with this gift of grace and praise and passion and power. In our resolve, let us sing together. Christ has lived, died, risen, ascended. Why are we looking up to heaven When Christ is here, may we look around and see the face of Christ, knowing that the mantle has been passed to us, that the Spirit is promised to us, that the power is multiplied in the people of the church, and the passion is unleashed among us. Know now that you are witnesses of Christ's transforming love. Go from this place to live it each day. Amen. Reimagine God. So when he was crucified, when he died, they had to be devastated. But they hadn't even begun to grieve when he came back to them. He was with them from time to time in really profound ways during these 40 days since that first Easter morn. He taught them about the realm of God, how they could find it, and then die again. After pronouncing a blessing on them and commissioning them to continue the work that he had done, he left. He was lifted up, the scripture says, and a cloud took him out of their sight. Jesus changed. He changed when he was resurrected, and now he's changing again, this time physically removed from them. And because of that, and what's the point? What difference does it make in our lives of faith that Jesus was ascended, seemingly levitates from the earth? Let's look at the story again. The disciples had lost Jesus once. He had remade their lives. He had reshaped their purpose. He had helped them, I imagine, and how they could live the sort of life that Jesus lived. Because of all that had happened, I suspect that they hung on every word. But on this Ascension Day, he leaves again. Oh, it was different this time. No suffering, no death, but a will, a design somehow to leave. That he wasn't intended to be with them in a continuing way and live for a really long time. The story of Ascension is sort of an odd tale. And it's one that I look at, I don't know if you do or not, and say,